Welcome to the Florida Gardener Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer, and today is all about transporting yourself to Seaside serenity by creating your very own coastal landscape. Now, you don't have to live by the water to experience the tranquility and beauty of a coastal landscape. With the right combination of plants and hardscaping features, you can create a coastal garden in your very own space. Now, believe it or not, when I think coastal, Florida does not come to mind. I have a slight infatuation with the New England area. I also have an interest in old seaports and old fishing towns and just the history behind them. Cape Cod cottages and the rocky shores of Gloucester, Massachusetts specifically come to mind. I say that because when writing this episode, the inspiration was rocky seaside towns with overcast skies, not spring break in Miami or Clearwater. Disclaimer, this is a creative episode designed to inspire. While all of the plants we discuss today display some degree of salt tolerance, if you are someone that lives on or very near the beach, do your research, as some plants have a higher salt tolerance than others. Now, according to UF IFAS, plants installed within about 1/8 of a mile of saltwater coasts should be at least somewhat salt tolerant. Salt tolerant is a broad term that describes plants that can thrive in places subject to salt spray, saltwater inundation, or saltwater intrusion into shallow wells used for irrigation. Just an FYI. I'll include the botanical names of all of the plants and their level of salt tolerance in the show notes. And if you're not on the water, not to worry, neither am I. All of these plants perform great further inland. Okay, so let's get started. A coastal garden should blend seamlessly with its natural surroundings, so a muted color palette works best. This is not to say you can't incorporate other colors, but bright pink should not dominate the landscape. The landscape should feel light and airy. To give you a better idea, I envision soft, muted sandy naturals, crisp whites, serene greens, and various shades of blue. Colors such as lavender, coral, or even a bright burst of color can be used, but make sure it's intentional and use it sparingly as an accent. Now, coastal garden design also embraces natural and organic elements. Think textured, weathered, and natural materials. You can use natural stone or crushed shell in your garden bed in lieu of mulch. If space permits, consider adding a gravel or pebble pathway. You may also want to incorporate other natural elements, such as driftwood and large shells. And if you're adding furniture, consider natural textures such as wicker. Weathered timber sleepers are great for garden edging. You can even create your own boardwalk. And it doesn't have to be a real boardwalk, you guys. It can be a simple wood plank path to take you from one area of the garden to another. You may also want to add boulders or other large rocks. They can help define an area or act as a focal point in the landscape. And don't forget containers. Glazed ceramic pots come to mind. Flank the front entrance with dark blue ceramic pots, or maybe you have them sprinkled throughout the landscape. And play around with various shades. A lighter blue or even teal would be nice, just depending on your taste. Imagine a white crushed shell bed contrasted with the blue pots. It evokes a calm, soothing feeling. You can hear soft waves crashing on a rocky shoreline in the distance. The gentle rhythmic sound takes you away. Now you can also bring this feeling indoors with an oversized woven storage basket. There is something about a cotton coiled rope basket, especially a beige or cream-colored one, in a coastal styled home. You can use them to store blankets, of course, kids' stuff, dirty laundry, but my favorite way to use them inside is to showcase your favorite houseplants. I envision a large white bird of paradise. You can just leave it in its plastic pot and place it inside the basket along with a saucer. And there you go, immediate impact. So let's talk plants. For the most part, Florida soils are naturally sandy and extremely low in organic material, resulting in leaching and low nutrient levels. Well, this is actually great news because the majority of the plants we discuss today are Florida natives or they are Florida friendly. So they are well adapted to our nutrient-poor soil conditions and don't need extra fertilizers and coddling. And probably the best part, most of these plants are drought tolerant. I have firsthand grown many of these plants in ground with zero irrigation. And today I also have some recommendations for planters that require zero watering. Yes, you heard me right. You do not have to water these pots at all. Okay, so we're going to break this up into 5 categories of plants. 1, ground covers and flowers. 2, grasses. 3, vines. 4, trees and shrubs. And 5, succulents. Yes, succulents get their own category for this because they are so versatile in a coastal garden. And hint, hint, these might be the plants that I was talking about that you can put in a pot and totally neglect. So stay with me till the end. Okay, first up are ground covers and flowers. And to kick off this list, we have blue daze. Blue daze, a wave of ocean blue flowers, blankets this lovely low-growing ground cover. And its fuzzy, silvery green foliage contrasts the flowers nicely. I absolutely love blue daze. I think it's darling. You can use it as a front-of-the-border plant, to edge a pathway, or even in a potted display. Group a bunch together to really make a statement. They do well planted in mass. They're well behaved and won't get out of hand. Each plant grows 9 to 18 inches tall and spreads 24 to 36 inches, but that's really it. It's not going to expand outside of those dimensions for the most part. Now, you want to grow blue daze in full to part sun to really max out flower power. And fun fact, blue daze is in the morning glory family. So as you might assume, the flowers open in the morning light and they close up during the evening. They can also close on cloudy days. But don't worry, as soon as that sun returns, they'll reopen for you. Now, I've really been appreciating the underrated workhorses of the garden lately. And let me tell you, the oyster plant is one of them. Also known as Moses in the cradle, the oyster plant is a quick-growing ground cover, thriving in full sun to deep shade, and it's extremely drought tolerant. It has rosettes of upright, sword-shaped leaves that are green above and purple beneath. As the plant matures, it produces pups, so you will have lots of baby oyster plants. Yay! There is also a showy, variegated form of this plant called the tricolor oyster plant, with leaves of pink fuchsia, green, and white. I'm especially fond of this one, although like many variegated plants, it's less tolerant of full sun. So oyster plant sounds pretty great, right? So what's the catch? Well, it's not really a catch, but you gotta be extra careful with root rot with this guy. They really dislike wet conditions. Let me put it this way. I put them in a large stone container arrangement, and the container is not irrigated. So I was like, well, I'm just gonna mulch these guys well. And just the moisture alone that the mulch retained from natural rainfall was too much for them. Within only a week of planting, I had root rot in multiple oyster plants, which kind of sucked because I had just installed these at a job, but hey, it is what it is. Anyway, let's round this out because I still really like this plant, and I'm going to turn this into a positive by saying it's actually really good news for us gardeners, right? Hey, this is a plant that doesn't even want to be mulched. Talk about low maintenance. Moving on to beach sunflower, which is also known as dune sunflower. This Florida native naturally occurs along the coast, but adapts well for inland use. Its bright, cheerful yellow flowers attract pollinators. Beach sunflower is a spreading perennial plant that also reseeds, so it'll create a large clump over time. Many gardeners like to use it as a colorful and drought-resistant ground cover. I've also used it in planters to create potted pollinator gardens. I had a really gorgeous purple passionflower vine, which is a host plant for the Gulf fritillary butterfly. And anyway, I had the purple passionflower vine wrapped around 3 bamboo stakes, which I tied the bamboo stakes together at the top so that it looked like the frame of a teepee. Anyway, so that was in the center of the pot with the passion vine growing up and around it. And then the beach sunflower was growing around the base of the pot. And it just looked really lovely trailing out. So beach sunflower likes full to part sun. It will grow in less sun, but it just won't flower as frequently. It'll just look more like a green ground cover. Moving on to society garlic, which is a clump-forming herbaceous perennial with narrow grass-like green leaves and clusters of small lilac flowers. This plant is great for borders or mass plantings. The grass-like leaves reach out about a foot tall, and the flowers rise up on stalks about 2 feet tall. The delicate star-shaped purple flowers are darling, both for a coastal garden or on a plate. Yep, they are used as garnishes. All parts of society garlic are edible, in fact. And although not related to common garlic, it is, however, in the same plant family as onion. Now, FYI, the leaves do smell of garlic when disturbed, so keep this in mind when selecting a location for planting. Having society garlic in a high-traffic area may not be ideal. It used to not bother me as much. I used to think people are just over-exaggerating, but yeah, it's pretty garlicky. Oh my Lantana. That was terrible, I know, but I had to try. I love Lantana. It's heat, salt, and drought tolerant. There are so many types of Lantana to choose from. Trailing, mounding, even larger shrub forms, and a plethora of colors too. For a coastal themed landscape, I'm especially fond of the lavender and gold colorations. Now, FYI, both the native and even non-native species are pollinator friendly. Bees and butterflies will flock to the bright mounds of color. Florida does have 2 native varieties, Lantana involucrata. I'll include that name in the show notes, but the common name for it is button sage. And then also Lantana depressa. So those are both native to Florida. Another really common one that you'll see that is not native is Lantana camara. And it's considered an invasive species, and it causes a lot of uproar these days, so be very mindful if you buy it. But now, the thing is, Lantana camara is really pretty, so we've actually started to breed sterile varieties of it. And as far as the sterile varieties go, those are actually a great choice for the garden because they can't produce viable seeds or viable pollen. So as a result, they aren't invasive. So if you're going to buy Lantana camara, buy the sterile Lantana camara. If you don't know, ask at the garden center. Moving on to blanket flower, specifically Gaillardia pulchella, which is one of my favorites on the list. I've started countless blanket flowers from seed. Probably close to 100 at this point. I'm not kidding. I filled my entire garden bed with it one year, and it required no fertilizer and no irrigation. During our hot summer months and during our dry winter months, it was completely fine. Also known as Indian blanket or firewheel, blanket flower, specifically Gaillardia pulchella, occurs throughout Florida in dry savannas, coastal dunes, and other dry open areas. The daisy-like flowers are typically bicolored with an inner red band surrounded by an outer yellow band. Now, I specifically like the Gaillardia pulchella species because it's a colorful mounding perennial that really spreads out to blanket an area, and it easily self-seeds. It looks really beautiful, just like this huge blanket of color. The ones sold in the garden center are usually hybrids that stay very small and compact. They behave more like an annual. They're really good for like a pot or something like that. So it's not to say they aren't nice. I just prefer the longevity and the spreading habit of Gaillardia pulchella. This flower is happy in anything from full sun to part shade. Interestingly enough, Gaillardia pulchella was thought to be a Florida native. I actually bought my seeds from the Florida Wildflower Co-op, but recently it came out that it's not native to our state. However, according to the Wildflower Foundation, it's still considered a great Florida-friendly pollinator plant. Now, sidebar, just humor me for a moment. I love growing plants that naturally do well here, and consequently, I grow a ton of Florida natives. But the recategorization of Gaillardia pulchella, but this is why I personally feel that limiting chemical use and just having a good mix, like having some diversity in your space, are the most important things we can do for wildlife. That's my personal opinion. Now, if you're working on like a big like restoration project or something of the sort, that is totally different. I'm not talking about that. But the average backyard gardener, if your goal is a 100% pure Florida native yard, in a few years, they might end up coming out and saying, guess what? XYZ actually isn't native. The same thing is actually going on right now with the wildflower Biden's alba. It's not that I'm anti-Florida natives. It's just I just don't feel like they're like the only plant that has any type of ecological like benefit to wildlife is the best way to say it. So anyway, I digress. Thanks for listening. Moving on to Crossandras. Oh, Crossandras. The apricot-colored flowers are perfect for a coastal garden. I mean, it's close enough to the color coral. Crossandra flowers are sort of like the Flintstone push pops that we grew up eating in like the early 90s. That's the best way I can describe it. This tropical perennial will grow up to 3 feet tall with glossy textured leaves that are oval shaped. In South and Central Florida, Crossandra is an evergreen perennial that blooms most of the year. In North Florida, you can treat it more as like a container or annual plant. I really like it because it's a pretty versatile plant. You don't see that salmon apricot color often. So maybe it's just me, but I'm just real smitten with this one. Here in South Florida, you can use it in the landscape and in container displays. It plays really well with other plants. As a bonus, Crossandra blooms equally well in sun and part shade. Purple Queen or Purple Heart is another unsung hero of the landscape and container garden. It's a low-growing trailer with deep purple fleshy foliage that can quickly fill an area. And as a bonus, it produces tiny, darling little lavender flowers. Now, Purple Heart can be used as a ground cover, cascading in baskets, or even as a trailer in mixed containers, or even as a houseplant. They really shine when planted in mass for in-ground plantings. And for an extra stunning display, combine Purple Heart with a plant that has some chartreuse-colored foliage. That contrast of the deep purple with like the lime green foliage is just incredible. So Purple Queen is salt-tolerant, wind-tolerant, heat-tolerant, drought-tolerant, thrives in nutrient-deficient soil, and does equally well in sun and shade. I mean, I love a hanging basket full of petunias as much as the next gal, but I don't know. The more I garden, the more I appreciate plants like Purple Queen. And fun fact, Purple Queen is related to the oyster plant we discussed earlier. They are both in the spiderwort family. Sometimes called beach morning glory, Florida native railroad vine is a sprawling plant that puts out low-growing runners covered with leathery green leaves. It can easily reach 30 feet. So it's these long, straight runners that give railroad vine its common name. Being native to dunes and beaches, railroad vine can tolerate intense heat, full sun, and poor soils, but it requires excellent drainage. It's a pioneer species, frequently found on beach dunes and sandy shores, where it plays a crucial role in stabilizing the sand. Pretty cool, huh? Now, if you don't live on the beach, no problem. It also makes for a great ground cover further inland, provided it has well-draining soil. Railroad vine produces occasional large pink trumpet-shaped flowers that open in the morning and close by mid-afternoon. If you want a ground cover that really gives off the Florida coastal vibe, this lady is for you. Just make sure you have the space because she's going to want to spread. Now, Coontie is a very hardy, slow-growing cycad that asks very little from us. This small shrub grows pretty slow, to about 3 feet tall by 3 feet wide. It looks like a small fern. And because they take so long to grow and don't get really big anyway, I'm including the Coontie here under ground covers, not under shrubs. The Coontie can be used around a mailbox, to line a walkway, and accent a garden bed. It's pretty dang versatile. It's also a host plant for the Atala butterfly. And fun fact, the Coontie is a living fossil. It's a prehistoric plant as it belongs to the ancient cycad family, which predates flowering plants and was abundant during the time of dinosaurs. It's often referred to as a living fossil due to its evolutionary stability over millions of years. Moving on to our next category, which is grasses. Now, no coastal-inspired garden is complete without some sea oats. I'll be honest though, it might be difficult to track down some Florida native sea oats, but I have a few other options that will work fabulously. First up is white fountain grass, which is a lovely ornamental grass with fine textured foliage and feathery white cream flowers, aka plumes, which bloom almost nonstop year-round. This is one of my favorite grasses because it just always looks good. It grows in dense but graceful clumps. And they kind of start off with like an upright form at first, and then the leaves start to arch at maturity into the fountain pattern that we all know. The grass is equally striking in the landscape and in a pot. Next up is muhly grass. You know it's fall in Florida when you see the pinkish purple fluffy flower stalks of this Florida native light up the landscape. Muhly grass is naturally found in Florida's pine flatwoods, coastal uplands, and even along our highways. But these days, it's also a popular choice in home and commercial landscapes. Muhly grass can be grown throughout Florida and is often used in borders or in mass plantings for a beautiful drift-like effect. Like most ornamental grasses, muhly grass will perform best if it's planted in a sunny area. You want to water new plants until they're established, and after that, they'll have a really good drought tolerance. Fakahatchee grass is another Florida native. This one doesn't really have that delicate weeping or fountain effect like the other two. Instead, this guy prefers to stay a little bit more upright, and its blades are a little bit thicker, not as delicate looking. It looks more like a traditional grass in the sense that its green leaf blades are, well, more grass-like. It has a tall, green, grass-like foliage rising upright to form clumps that are between 4 and 6 feet tall and wide. The leaves have small, sharp teeth along their edges. The inconspicuous flowers can be white, pink, yellow, or rust-colored, but you don't really grow this for the flowers. The grassy texture of these plants will definitely add some character to any yard. Fakahatchee grass can grow to be quite large, so if you're short on space, there's a dwarf Fakahatchee that may be a better option. All right, we're moving on to our third category, which is vines. Add a trellis or an arbor to your space and grow one of these ladies. So Black-Eyed Susan is a lush, quick-growing vine with heart-shaped leaves and flowers that are typically either yellow or orange, although there are other cultivars in shades of apricot, terracotta, salmon, rose, and ivory. Those colors just sound so lovely. So this is one of my favorite vines. Its flowers are just so cheerful. Because the Black-Eyed Susan vine is such a vigorous grower, it also works well to hide unsightly structures such as an old fence. Now, if you want to up your butterfly game in a coastal garden, plant corky stem passion vine. So I've discussed purple passion vine on here before. To be clear, on this episode, we are specifically talking about corky stem passion vine, which isn't as showy as the purple passion vine, but it is more salt tolerant. While corky stem doesn't have the large, alien-like purple flowers, it's still a lovely host plant. Its small flowers attract the Gulf fritillary butterfly, among others. You can let it grow on a trellis or even up a tree, and enjoy watching the life cycle of baby caterpillars transform into adult butterflies. As a reminder, I'll be including the botanical names of all the plants in the show notes, so feel free to reference that to help avoid any confusion. Now, bougainvillea is probably the most popular vine down here, and it puts on a stunning display of color. Bougainvillea is native to Mexico, Brazil, Bolivia, Paraguay, Peru, and Argentina. However, this showstopper has also become very popular in other areas with warm climates, such as California and, of course, Florida. Now, be cautious with this vine as it does have thorns. But if you have a sunny spot, a good pair of gloves, and thick skin, literally, this lady will impress. It's available in a plethora of colors, various shades of pink, purple, orange, and white that will provide a fluorescent glow that really no other flowering woody plant can. FYI, there are also bougainvilleas available in bush and tree form. I think there are also some even trained as topiaries. So if you want a bougainvillea trained as a vine specifically, you want to scout out the ones that come with like a little wood trellis inside the plastic grower's pot with the plant. They are readily available at the garden center. And fun fact, the flowers on the bougainvillea are not true flowers. They are actually colorful bracts. B as in boy, R-A-C-T-S. Okay, we're moving right along to our fourth category, which is trees and shrubs. First on this list is Texas sage. I love the silvery foliage of this plant. The tiny lilac flowers are just a bonus. Texas sage is a medium-sized shrub with a compact form, delicate silvery to gray-green leaves, and stunning displays of prolific purple blooms from summer into fall. It's sometimes called the barometer bush because flowering is triggered by humidity or high soil moisture after rains. Texas sage is native to, you guessed it, Texas, but also northern Mexico. While not native to Florida, it does quite well here too. Texas sage is drought tolerant and works well in borders, foundations, as a specimen, or even in larger pots along driveways or on your patio. It's also effectively grown for a windbreak, making this guy a fantastic coastal planting. Now, coral bean is a Florida native plant with vibrant red tubular flowers, which develop on tall stalks. In North and Central Florida, coral bean grows as a large annual or perennial, reaching 6 feet tall before it freezes to the ground in winter. In South Florida, it grows as a large shrub or small tree. Coral bean is an incredibly versatile plant. It's drought and salt tolerant and pest resistant, making it the perfect addition to your Florida landscape. And it's very showy when it blooms. The vibrant red flowers are followed by black seed pods that crack open to reveal striking crimson seeds. Want to attract hummingbirds to your yard? This is the plant for you. The natural range of sea grape covers the coastal areas of Central and South Florida from zones 10A to 11. It's been reported as far north as zone 9A, but it is sensitive to frost and freeze. Sea grape is a tropical-looking and unique Florida native plant. It grows 10 to 30 feet tall, but it can be trimmed back. It also produces clusters of red grape-like fruits. Though not true grapes, these fruits are edible, and the taste is often compared to muscadine grapes, which both birds and humans can enjoy. Now, you don't have to live on the beach to enjoy sea grapes. It can be grown inland just as easily. You can use it as a shrub for screening and privacy, or plant it like as a specimen or like a sculptural tree. And if you really want to get creative, I saw someone use sea grape in a planter by their front door. A small potted sea grape was towards the back, and then mixed around the base was trailing lavender lantana and burnt orange bulbine. We'll discuss bulbine later in this episode, so don't worry. What about as interior decor? Trim off a few branches of sea grape and add it to a vase for the perfect coastal aesthetic. Better yet, bring the whole dang plant inside. Sea grape as a houseplant? Imagine placing one inside one of those cotton rope baskets we discussed earlier. Yes, please. Okay, so hear me out on Ixora. If you're going for more of the Cape Cod, cottage, coastal vibe, the traditional hydrangeas immediately come to mind, which of course most don't fare well down here. We do have our own version called the tropical hydrangea. However, it's not salt tolerant, so keeping in theme, I went for the next best option. Now, when you envision Ixora, you're probably thinking about the reddish-orange dwarf varieties that landscapers trim into a box, and they just look awful if I'm being honest. They also have very tiny leaves. No, ladies and gents, we are talking about the larger, more standard-size Ixoras. These tropical beauties have showy pom-pom clusters of flowers, and larger cultivars, Nora Grant and Super King, have some of the brightest, largest bloom colors of all. They also have larger leaves than the dwarf varieties. Now, I also really love Maui Yellow, which is like a burst of sunshine for the yard. This one maxes out about 3 to 4 feet, so it's smaller than the Nora Grant and Super King, but it still has the large pom-pom clusters of flowers, which I absolutely adore. The blooms of this tropical shrub come in lively reds, oranges, yellows, and pinks. Some varieties even exhibit mixed colors within the same bloom. I'm growing one right now that is a mix of red, orange, and yellow, all on the exact same flower. And then just as a helpful tip, if you start to notice that your Ixora leaves are a really dull, yellowish green and the plant is not flowering a lot, it might be the soil. Ixoras prefer a slightly acidic soil, so consider adding organic matter such as peat moss, which will help to lower soil pH. And then you may also want to consider testing your soil beforehand. So Luster Leaf, Luster Leaf, has a few products for at-home soil testing. They also have an Amazon storefront, which makes ordering really easy, so you can look them up if you're interested in that. Next up is plumbago. This mounding, somewhat vine-like shrub is another great flowering plant for the Cape Cod aesthetic. This gorgeous lady is covered in clusters of pale blue, fox-like flowers for the majority of the year. Plumbago is excellent as a foundation planting, used in planters, or even cascading down a retaining wall, showing off its striking blue flowers. I absolutely love this sprawling shrub. When it comes to low-maintenance flower power, I can't think of a better plant. I use it in the landscape and in containers. In fact, I have blue plumbago in blue ceramic pots at a job, and it's so lovely the way it spills out of the pot, and the blue on blue is just stunning. It grows to 3 to 4 feet tall and 5 feet wide, although you can trim it back to stay more compact. There is also a white flowering variety, and I think if you combine the white plumbago with the blue, it just creates the most charming coastal cottage feel. Oleander is a wonderful flowering shrub for coastal conditions, and like all of the plants on this list, it does well inland too. Now, new South Floridians, keep in mind, oleander is a host plant for the oleander caterpillar, aka the polka dot wasp moth caterpillar. So, if you don't want caterpillars munching on the leaves, I'd suggest not planting it. Or maybe just start with one oleander. Don't create like an entire oleander hedge like my community did, and then they end up spraying this thing every year, and then finally after, I don't know, it's probably been like 10 years, they just gave up and pulled them all out. Anyway, the polka dot wasp moth is a year-round inhabitant of South Florida and the Keys, but it's usually killed by cold winter temperatures in northern and north central Florida. So it's not in those areas all year. I say that because I don't think north and central Florida gardeners need to be as concerned. And just FYI, the polka dot wasp moth will not sting you. It truly is a moth. It just happens to fly during the day. Anyway, back to the oleander. Oleander has long, dark green leaves and blooms throughout much of the year, especially in warm months. The bright flowers come in shades of white, pink, red, coral, and yellow, depending on the variety. The white flowers are especially bright, and they really pop in the landscape, especially against the dark green leaves of the oleander. There are also varieties with single blossoms and double blossoms. Oleander is fast-growing, can handle a broad range of soil types, and has a really high tolerance to sea spray, making it a great addition to a beachside landscape. As a small tree, it can reach 10 to 18 feet tall, but you can keep it pruned back as a shrub. There are also dwarf cultivars that max out around 4 feet tall. Buttonwood, aka green buttonwood, is a low-branching, multi-trunked, shrubby, evergreen tree with vibrant, glossy green leaves. While it's capable of reaching a height of 40 feet with a 20-foot spread, buttonwood is often seen as a small shrub, ideal for use as a screen, clipped hedged, or specimen planting. Now, there is also a silver buttonwood, which, you guessed it, is a striking variety with silvery gray leaves. Silver buttonwood is much more common than green buttonwood, so you're more likely to see the silver one at the garden center or nursery. It also grows a bit smaller, with a height of 15 to 20 feet and a 15 to 20 foot spread. Silver buttonwood can be used as a specimen tree, part of a natural privacy screen, or pruned into a low hedge. Both the green and silver buttonwood trees thrive in coastal landscapes, taking salt inundation and salty soils like a champ. They're also resistant to wind and can withstand hurricane conditions. What a great tree! One of my clients has green buttonwood planted in large commercial raised beds. There's probably about 10 of them, and they're all trained as like specimen trees, not as shrubs. Anyway, this client's very near the water, and these trees are up on the 7th floor of a garden terrace where it gets really, really windy. I can't stress to you how crazy it gets up there sometimes. So I can attest to the hardiness of these trees. They are tough and long-lasting in the landscape. Now, you may not expect rosemary to be on the list, but it is so versatile. Fragrant, evergreen, pollinator-friendly, rosemary deserves a spot in any seaside-inspired landscape. Its slender, needle-like leaves and unique texture add visual interest to the garden. Rosemary is native to coastal regions of the Mediterranean and North Africa, which, fun fact, also includes Morocco, which is where my mother is from. So rosemary typically grows as a woody perennial or small shrub. This Florida-friendly plant will thrive year-round in the Sunshine State. It can reach up to 6 feet tall and 4 to 5 feet wide when planted in the ground, but it'll remain smaller if pruned or planted in containers. It's a hardy, drought-tolerant shrub that thrives in hot, sunny sites with good drainage. Most bear tiny white or blue flowers when they bloom. Just side note, out of all the herbs you can grow down here, especially in South Florida, rosemary is by far the easiest, and it truly acts as a perennial. I mean, I've had rosemary for years and years and years, and it's just totally fine. It is my favorite low-maintenance herb. And fun fact, rosemary can also be trimmed into interesting topiary shapes. Around the holidays, many stores actually sell rosemary plants that have been shaped into Christmas trees. So pay attention this holiday season, and you'll probably notice that at the grocery store. Okay, so our fifth and last category, and probably my favorite, is succulents. If you're going for an underwater coral kind of vibe, the world is your oyster, pun intended, because you can create a dreamy beachscape using succulents and succulents only. This category is vast. So agave are first up. These succulents have handsome rosettes of usually thick, rigid, fleshy leaves with marginal teeth. And oftentimes they have a sharp terminal spine. They come in a variety of sizes, shapes, and colors, so there really is one for everyone. One of my favorites is the classic chalky blue-gray agave called Agave Americana, commonly known as the blue century plant. This one gets rather big, 4 to 5 feet wide and 5 to 6 feet tall. It's prized for its dramatic appearance and its low maintenance. It really is a beautiful specimen plant. Just be sure to plant it away from foot traffic to avoid being pricked by the needle-sharp spines on the leaf tips. It's valued for its architectural form, which adds visual interest to really any garden, and it can adapt to most soil conditions, from sandy to rocky types. Blue agave is great to frame entryways, plant as focal points in the center of your island bed, or even keep it potted. There is a variegated one called the yellow striped century plant that I'm really fond of. It has creamy yellow and green leaves. It's sort of like, it has like this strong yellow variegation in the middle, and then its leaves are like slightly recurved and twisted. This guy gets pretty large too, making it a fantastic specimen. So I talked about two really big prickly ones, but there are over 200 agave species, which exhibit a wide range of characteristics, from small spineless varieties to the large spiky ones. So regardless of your space, there really is an agave for it. Next up is aloe vera. I remember when I first got into plants, I had a few aloes, a random bougainvillea, and then like one lonesome rosemary bush. None of them received much in the way of care, but despite that, they all seem to thrive in my sunny, west-facing bed. My point to this is aloe vera is a phenomenal entry-level plant. Landscape, potted, indoors, this guy is carefree and forgiving. And like most, if not all succulents, it'll produce a tall flower stalk once it reaches maturity. However, unlike agaves and other succulents, these plants will continue growing after they flower. Oftentimes, the flower is a sign that the mother plant is on its way out, but that is not the case for aloe, which can bloom multiple times in its life. Now, another cool thing, whether growing aloe, agaves, or even bromeliads, the mother plant produces offshoots, aka pups, so you'll always have more plants. Yay! And the aloe flowers are incredible. To me, it's one of the prettiest flowers on a succulent. There is nothing more striking than aloe vera in bloom. It certainly looks like something you'd see on another planet. Large torch-like flowers in vibrant colors of yellow, orange, or red, depending on the variety. The brightly colored clusters of spiky tubular flowers are arranged on long stalks that rise above its rosette of thick green leaves. I've heard certain varieties produce white and even pink flowers, although I have not seen this. Aloe vera plants, while not native to Florida, thrive in our climate and are widely cultivated here. These succulents prefer well-draining soil, infrequent watering, and full sun to partial shade. And fun fact, the gel that comes from its thick leaves is often used to cool minor burns and sunburns. And some even use it as a face gel for anti-aging. I've also heard it's good for acne and other skin conditions. Now, if you like flowers and want a succulent that looks different than the typical spiky, spiny types, look no further than the desert rose. Desert rose looks like a bonsai. It has a thick, swollen trunk that holds water during times of drought and shiny, dark green leaves. It's a low-maintenance succulent that produces dozens of gorgeous trumpet-shaped flowers in shades of pink, rose, or white, off and on all year, provided you give it plenty of sun. And that's really it. You don't have to do anything else, and you'll feel like the best gardener in the world because this thing is just going to throw out flowers just nonstop, and you're really not going to have to do anything. Desert rose looks beautiful when planted in the landscape, and it's also a great choice for container gardens. Just don't overwater it. This plant thrives on neglect. No matter where you grow desert rose, it's a perfect companion for cacti and other succulents. Now, as a disclaimer, the polka dot wasp moth caterpillars, the same ones that eat oleanders, like desert rose leaves too. However, I gotta be honest, normally the invasive curly-tailed lizards and the Peter's Rock agama lizards eat all of the caterpillars before they can do major damage to my plant. Because the desert rose is shorter and has a thick, firm base, I think it makes it easier for the lizards to climb up it, whereas I think they have more trouble getting the caterpillars off of a large, mature oleander. At least that's my guess based on observations in my own community. If you can only add one succulent from this list, please tell me it will be fire sticks. Fire sticks, aka pencil cactus, aka sticks on fire, is my favorite succulent on the list. It looks like a funky piece of terrestrial coral. It has thin pencil-like stems that grow upright in a branching pattern. And it got its name because in full sun it has burnt orange to red tips. It sort of has an ombre look. The base of the plant is green, the center is yellowish orange, and the tips are burnt orange to red. Now, this guy is technically a succulent shrub, as it can reach heights up to 30 feet in the landscape. However, most folks keep it potted. With that being said, it's a slow grower, so you can certainly plant it in the ground, just be prepared to give it the occasional trim. Either way, I would consider this a specimen plant. You're probably not going to fill an entire bed with fire sticks. As an FYI, fire sticks does have a milky white sap that it produces when you break off a piece or if you're pruning it. And yes, it is toxic to pets and humans, and it can cause skin irritations. So just be mindful, use gloves, and wear eye protection. But also, just in case you didn't know, many plants are toxic. Milkweed, for example, is toxic to pets, humans, and livestock. And a lot of plants produce a milky white sap that can irritate the skin. Milkweed, poinsettias, many plants in the ficus family, like the rubber tree, fiddle leaf fig, and the green island ficus. So it's also important to keep in mind that when you read that something is toxic, some are just mildly irritating and some are really poisonous. The amount ingested is a critical factor too. Depending on the plant, a small amount may not be problematic, while larger or repeated doses could be really harmful. I will say, if you have curious animals, I would steer clear of the oleander. That's one that certainly comes to mind that you want to be mindful of, but really it just depends on the plant and your pet's level of curiosity. I'm certainly not trying to make light of the fact that some plants can cause serious harm, but what I am trying to say is toxic plants are all around us. It's a natural defense mechanism for the plant, but it doesn't mean you're going to die. Don't eat anything unless you know what it is, and always watch your children and pets. End rant. Now, Angelina sedum is a low-growing succulent with soft, needle-like foliage that is gold or a lime green color. It forms a lovely trailing mat of chartreuse-colored leaves, and it sort of feels spongy to the touch when you press down on it. It's kind of fun to play with. There is also a lesser-known bluish-gray variety called blue spruce, appropriately named as it absolutely reminds me of winter, and I just really love it. I'll use the blue one in seasonal arrangements, and they look like blue spruce pine needles, except they are soft, so they won't prick you. But okay, enough about that. For the coastal landscape, I'd suggest going with Angelina sedum, the chartreuse-colored one, as it's more forgiving and easier to source. And it performs equally well in sun and shade. Next up are purslane and portulaca. These are two different plants, but they are very similar, so we're going to knock them out together. Purslane and portulaca are beautiful flowering succulents. Depending on the type, they stay low and compact while others spread a bit, making for great trailing plants. Folks, including myself, confuse the two all the time, but the way you can tell them apart is purslane has flat teardrop or ovate-shaped leaves. Portulaca has cylindrical leaves. Both come in a multitude of flower colors, and they really are striking when in bloom. The flowers, like a few on this list, open when it's sunny and close during the evenings or on overcast days. Baby sunrose is another succulent that can be used as a ground cover or as a trailing plant in a pot or hanging basket. This one might be my favorite ground cover succulent. Its fleshy leaves are a glossy green. There is also a variegated variety that is adorned with creamy white edges. Both types will bloom off and on all year with darling daisy-like flowers that are a reddish pink color. Oftentimes, a variegated variety of a plant is more sensitive in the sun, but that is not the case with the variegated baby sunrose. It's a champ. Both types, the green and variegated, perform well in sun and shade, and both are equally tough. I like this ground cover succulent more than some of the others because even when it's not in bloom, the foliage is really beautiful, especially the variegated one. Whereas in my opinion, purslane, for example, may be a bit underwhelming when it's not flowering. So we're ending with bulbine, which is a ground cover with fleshy grass-like leaves, similar to society garlic, which we discussed at the beginning of this episode. However, bulbine is a succulent and society garlic is not. And as a bonus, bulbine does not have a strong garlic smell. I love the flowers. They are like little fireworks, gorgeous spikes of yellow or burnt orange depending on the type. Bulbine maxes out at 12 to 18 inches tall, making it a great border plant. Also, if you recall from earlier in this episode, I mentioned a coastal-inspired potted arrangement using sea grape, trailing lantana, and bulbine. Imagine bulbine's upright blades of grass-like foliage with burnt orange flower spikes bursting out of the plant like fireworks. Around the base of the container, you have trailing lavender lantana spilling over. The sea grape towards the back adds height, structure, and interesting texture with its large, round, leathery leaves. This combination makes for a low-maintenance yet really interesting container display. Before we end this episode, we've covered a lot, and sometimes I'm guilty of this too. I think, I don't have the money or the resources. I can't recreate all of this in my yard, or, my space is really tiny. I just want to paint you a picture. So I have a neighbor, and I live in a small townhome community, by the way. We don't have massive space where I live, okay? So I have a neighbor with a small white crushed shell bed along the side of his house. He simply alternated between planting the standard oyster plant and the chalky blue agave. That's it, all the way down. And then he has another small bed with the same white crushed shell laid down in the ground. And then he's placed in that bed a few, I would say, small to medium-sized blue ceramic pots running the length of that bed. And then all he did is plant some aloe in those pots. He also has a small little island bed, same deal, keeping in theme. He put crushed shell in that bed, and all he did was fill the entire thing with muley grass. So in the fall, it's like this beautiful pinkish purple display of the muley grass flowers. It's really, really nice. Neighbor across the street from him, same deal, has a long, narrow bed along the side of his house, but instead of doing the white crushed shell, he filled it with just like a really inexpensive white landscape rock. And then he added a few large ceramic pots to run the length of his bed. And same deal, he decided to do a dark blue ceramic pot. I want to say there are probably about 5 pots evenly spaced out running the length of his bed. And each pot contains a different type of agave. He may even have some aloe in there too. Anyway, talk about low maintenance. You quite literally don't have to do anything. Once you get them in the pots, pay attention to them for the first month. But then after that, I know these neighbors relatively well, and they're not out there. They're not plant people. They don't care, and they look great. They always look great. If you're a snowbird or someone that just likes to travel, you could leave 6-12 months. Your plants will be fine, assuming they are planted. Now, the key here is assuming they're planted in a spot where they will receive natural rainfall. But as long as they can receive natural rainfall, they're good. So all I'm really trying to say is this doesn't have to be complicated. Now, there are many more plants that we did not discuss today, but hopefully this has been a great starting point for you and gives you some inspiration for creating your own coastal-inspired garden. All right, so that wraps up episode 22 of The Florida Gardener. We'll see you soon for episode 23. And in the meantime, if you'd like to subscribe to my free newsletter, download one of my garden templates, or check out my social, you can access everything through my website, rootsredefined.com. That's roots, ROOTS, redefined, REDEFINED.com. All right, thanks guys. We'll see you again soon.